All right, well, good morning. Welcome to another adventure. We are still in Virginia. The last day of my trip, we are in the Jamestown, historic Jamestown. And if not familiar, this was the first English settlement here in North America. And it led to a lot of the stuff we have today. So I'll go over a brief history as we walk toward the site. Not too in depth, but just a brief history of this area, and then we'll go explore some of the historic Jamestown. So come along as we explore the first permanent English settlement here in North America.
Traveling around and come with me.
All right, so in 1607, about 104 English colonists came to North America. And they were looking for, so there was uprising in England, a lot of problems, so they wanted to explore on their own. So they came here on 3 ships, and they settled here on Jamestown as the first permanent colony. So there were three major groups here. You have the English colonists, you have the natives, and then you had African Americans. So all 3 of them played a major role in settling Jamestown. So of course, the Indian group, or the Native American group, you probably are familiar with the story of Powhatan. This is the story of Pocahontas. So Powhatan was the natives here. He was the chief. And John Smith was one of the colonists, and he was captured. And they were going to execute him, or so the story goes. And Pocahontas came to his defense and saved his life. Now she did marry a colonist, but it wasn't John Smith, it was John Rolfe. So that's interesting. But there's a lot of myth to the story of Pocahontas and John Smith. There's a whole display in the visitor center there. And then about 20 years later, the first African Americans came here, and systematically they would help with they along with the natives would try and establish this colony. And once we get up here, I'll tell you a little bit more about what went down here. All right, so the English brought three very, very significant things with them, establishing this colony. The first one was Protestantism. They brought their religion. That's the main reason why they came here, is for religious freedom, and they wanted to be able to practice their religion without being persecuted by the monarchs over in England, the king and queen. They also brought representative government. If you know anything about world history, it was a lot of kings and monarchs and dictators that have been ruling. There was nothing governing the people, nothing, not elections or nothing representing government like that. So Jamestown was the first colony that actually established that, like a representative government. You had someone from the colony representing the people's best interest. And then that formed the Virginia legislature, and that's how some of the laws got enacted. And then that led to the third significant thing, and that was slavery. So you know that the English, this was the first English colony, but the Spaniards had been here and the French had been here earlier. But they didn't have slaves with them. So this was by the English legislature, very slowly but surely they stripped away African Americans' rights, because they originally came here as indentured servants. So if you don't know what that is you work for a period of time. A lot of them was for the patches. They couldn't afford to come over here, so they would come here and work. They would be considered property during that time, but there would be an end date. There would be an end date where once that was done, they would be free. Well, very slowly the English legislators stripped all that away, and eventually it became, in about 100 years later, it became out slavery, or how they legislated. So that's a brief history. So that's really where the throes of slavery began, is some of the processes that came through here. So very fascinating history. You can read more about this. I don't want to get too in depth. I want to kind of explore the colonies, but that's a little bit of what went on here. You notice the monument behind me? So this was the Virginia Company of London, the chartered, founded in Jamestown and sustained Virginia from 1607. So the Virginia Company was the one that sent the people over here, and they erected this monument. So we're go exploring this this island. All right, so this is the archaeological site. This is done by Preservation Virginia, and actually the original fort. So in 1607 they built a fort. So that's going to be over here. So we'll take a look at that, and we'll go check out these cool sites over here they have. That is the inlet of the Chesapeake Bay and the James River. All right, let's go see what we have here. All right, well, I mentioned Pocahontas. So here is a statue of Pocahontas. So there's no doubt that she was real, that she existed. So here's a little history. So she was born around 1595, probably how I always pronounce that, which is about 15 miles from here. And I mentioned Captain John Smith. Now that is disputed, but he believed that she saved his life twice during the colony's first years. So Pocahontas was kidnapped in 1613 by Captain Argo, and he brought her to Jamestown. And while she was here, she received lessons in Christianity, and she converted, and she was baptized as a Christian. And I didn't mention she did marry archaeologist John Rolfe in April 1614, and that marriage helped establish peaceful relations between the Powhatan and colonists. And then she visited England with Rolfe and the infant son, and and today many Americans claim descent from her son and granddaughter. So a little history about probably the most famous resident here in Jamestown, Pocahontas, and her marriage to John Rolfe. So you can pause that and read the rest of that. All right, the archaeological discovery. This was the site of the original fort, Fort James, when the Jamestown was first established. And they had thought that this was lost to the sea years ago, but it turns out that some of the structures are still standing on the land, which is pretty cool when you think about how long ago this was here. And these mark these wooden fences mark the boundary of where the fort was. So and they determined that through archaeological findings. So we'll walk around here for a little bit and check out some of the history here. So I was talking to one of the volunteers here. He said these are exactly where the outside of the fort was back in 1607. He said they would have been about 15 feet high, but that they didn't put them farther underground because obviously they didn't want to destroy the actual foundation. Well, that's pretty neat. He said these weren't discovered until, you see this part has been lost to the sea. But he said prior to 1994, they didn't know. They thought this was lost, and then they brought in another archaeological chief archaeology here. And he said the island was 100 yards further out to sea. So 400 years of erosion will do that to you. All right, so this is the foundation of where the old church was in 1608. I was talking to the guide. He says this has been ranked as one of the most significant archaeological finds, because this is where Pocahontas and John Rolfe got married, right in this area. So to see one of the spots where they actually got married is pretty significant. And he said once that was discovered, once they announced it, they got a lot of interest in this area. So this would have been the church. So it probably would have been right in this area here. That is pretty cool. And that would have been the burial plots. So they uncovered four graves back there. Amazing history here. All right, here is a scale model of what the James Fort looked like back in 1607 when it was first established here. And this is due to archaeological remains and historical accounts of this. So that's how they determined this. But this is history. This is the first English settlement. Pretty cool. You can see the buildings over there. You can see the church there, right over there. So this was what's called a Consular's Row, which is where the people of Jamestown buried the dead. And the first year here was very harsh. So out of the original 104 settlers, only 38 survived the first year. And the Virginia Company, which is the company that sent them over here, mandated that the dead and sick be concealed from the Indians, which is why the burial ground is inside the fort. And the archaeologists, a few of them have been investigated. So these are the graves of some of the original settlers here of Jamestown. Pretty interesting, and amazing that we have the technology to figure all this out. All right, here's a look into history. So this is the archaeological remains that they uncovered. That is awesome. Of Jamestown, absolutely awesome. Alright, so archaeologists believe that this is the grave of Sir George Yeardley. He was the first representative governor of the well, he was a three-time governor of Virginia, but he was he presided over the first representative assembly here in Jamestown, which was the forefathers of our government system. And like many early founding, he had a complicated legacy because he was also one of the first to purchase some African Americans who were forced here. So again, he was ahead of his time in terms of the government, but also was a slave owner. So we just have to keep that in mind when we look back at history, because a lot of these people are very complicated legacies. Alright, very cool site, Jamestown. You could say it's the birthplace of America because it is the first English settlement. Fascinating history with the settlers, with Pocahontas, with John Smith, and the archaeology. This was relatively undiscovered. Up until 1994, they thought it had been washed away into the James River, but that's not true. A lot of it still remains and is still doing archaeological work today. and they're finding out more information each day. In fact, they're talking to a lot of the volunteers and telling me stories that have never that you don't learn in school. Very, very fascinating. I highly recommend, if you're a fan of history, come visit the site. So we're going to end the video here. Thanks for coming along, and we'll see you in the next adventure.